Hey everyone, Zion over here from Nintendo Life, and today we're here to share with you our review of Final Fantasy 1 through 6 Pixel Remaster on the Nintendo Switch. Now, this review was originally written by Lowell Bell for NintendoLife.com, but was reworked into this video by me. Few series are as beloved as Final Fantasy, and given how many re-releases, remasters, and remakes we've gotten over the years, Square-Enix knows it. Often, these remakes and re-releases have questionable quality and design choices that die-hard fans lament. But here we have the Final Fantasy 1 through 6 Pixel Remaster, which bundles the first 6 games into one convenient, streamlined package, with respect for the original versions from the Nintendo and Super Nintendo at the forefront. It's worth noting right off the bat that you can purchase these titles individually if you prefer as well. Now, these remasters initially released separately on Steam and mobile across 2021 and 2022. And these versions include updated pixel graphics and rearranged orchestral scores, along with gameplay balances aplenty. So for the most part, the collection maintains respect for the old while introducing a few extra bells and whistles for the console releases, which will help introduce these classics to a whole new generation. So let's get all of the similarities out of the way. The first 3 Final Fantasy games, which were developed originally for the NES and Famicom, benefit most from the pixel graphics that have been updated to look great on modern screens. Playing undocked on our Switch OLED quickly became our favorite way to experience these classics though. Monster and character sprites look crisper than ever before, and more detailed backgrounds fill the entire screen with vivid color. The UI has also been streamlined across all 6 games and features 2 different fonts to choose from. You have the modern font, which received much backlash in the Steam mobile release, and our preference, which we used for this entire video, was the new pixel-style font. These updates make it hard to imagine that we'll ever truly dig out our old consoles to play them when we have a collection this easily accessible. While this crisp retro aesthetic is at the forefront of Square Enix's marketing, the most impressive part of this package is the rearranged soundtrack overseen by the original composer, Nobuo Uematsu. The orchestrated music adds quite a lot of gravitas. We couldn't help but crank up the volume during every battle fought and dungeon we entered. And at almost any time during each of the 6 games, you can pop open the menu and switch to the original chip tunes to compare. Square Enix also included massive quality of life improvements this time around, from an autosave feature, being able to turn random encounters off with the click of the right thumbstick, and the option to bump up the rate of experience and gil. All of this goes a long way towards making these 6 classic role-playing games the most accessible they've ever been. Being intimately familiar with the original games, we put several hours into each of these remasters to test the new systems and assess the quality of life updates. But given the time constraints and the inclusion of 6 games in this bundle that are each 20+ hours, we haven't gone through them all to the end quite yet. Now let's take a look at each game sorted by their original platform, and then we can help you decide whether or not you should opt for the bundle or just get the best of the bunch. We've already mentioned this, but the not-so-final Final Fantasy games on the NES benefit quite a lot from the Pixel Remaster upgrades, as they were released between 1987 and 1990 in Japan. They don't feature the epic narratives full of intriguing villains and sympathetic protagonists that the series would later become known for. Instead, they fall into the same rhythm as most early JRPGs. Go from town to town, solving problems such as defeating evil Jin or slaying world-threatening fiends while slowly uncovering the big old baddie behind the scenes that's making the world a terrible place. The turn-based battles and exploration are as straightforward as the story, but we appreciated the quaint simplicity. The rearranged soundtrack also goes a long way towards making these adventures feel much more grandiose than they actually look. The quality of life features lessen the headache caused by 3-decade-old mechanics in these 3 games in particular. Your party members, for example, would miss if their target died before they attacked in the first 2 games on NES and Famicom, and now they'll automatically redirect their attacks to another enemy. Plenty of other small tweaks and changes have been made across the board with spells and the availability of items that make adventuring less of an archaic burden, no more so than an autosave feature to ensure your progress isn't lost if you wipe out. In Final Fantasy 1 and 3, we found boosting your experience and gil earned from battles to 2 times, which the maximum is 4 times, made for a pleasant experience that balanced the grind and challenge well. Final Fantasy II is a bit of an odd chocobo, as it uses an attribute and skill level system instead of standard levels, which is similar to the Saga series. The more you cast spells, the more your magic attribute will increase. Likewise, a spell such as Fire 1 will eventually become Fire 2. This also means that experimentation with weapons will likely lead to wonky suboptimal builds. Thankfully though, the Pixel Remaster also includes a 2 times or 4 times boost to attribute and skill level gain, but we found even 2 times trivialized every encounter as we hunted down Mithril for Princess Hilda more than the other 2 games. It's worth noting that these remasters don't feature any additional content from other versions, such as the additional dungeons from Final Fantasy 1 and 2 Dawn of Souls on Game Boy Advance, which does stop the original 2 games in particular from feeling like truly definitive versions. Of this bunch, we enjoyed Final Fantasy III the most. Up until this point, we had only played the enhanced remake for the Nintendo DS, which featured some additional story beats, named main characters, and 3D visuals. 3 ditches the complicated skill and attribute system from 2 in favor of the familiar experience-based leveling of the original, with one key change: the job system. Final Fantasy III introduces the earliest rendition of the job system that would later become a staple of the main series and its spin-offs. We had little nostalgia going into 3, but it soon fascinated us by how similar it played to its predecessors, while also laying the groundwork for its successors. But we also just loved the crunchy guitar in its updated battle theme. All that said, these 3 classics do have interesting locations to visit with a few neat twists in regards to world building. Yet, there's not much here outside of some straightforward turn-based battles and a few several dozen hours of video game history. Given when they were first released, we don't really blame them for this, but we also wouldn't blame you for skipping over them either. There are many more involved JRPGs out there, but these 3 games are foundational and hugely important for the genre as a whole. Now, if we jump on over to the SNES selection, like a Dragoon would, this is where you can expect the sympathetic protagonists and intriguing villains the series is renowned for. Final Fantasy IV, my personal favorite of the bunch, follows the story of Cecil, or as the DS version tells us, Cecil. This Dark Knight struggles heavily with guilt while on an adventure to stop the sorcerer Golbez, and in doing so, pioneered stronger storytelling in JRPGs. Despite being over 30 years old, Final Fantasy IV once again engrossed us in its narrative. We're itching to get back to see Cecil's convoluted journey with its cast of 12 characters. The 4th game ditches the job system we loved so much from Final Fantasy III in favor of set classes. However, it makes up for this somewhat by introducing the active time battle system, giving each fight more of an involved pace. Of all the games in the collection, Final Fantasy IV has been ported and remade the most, also getting a full-on DS remake, much like Final Fantasy III. But this interpretation of the original Super Nintendo version shows how well the 1991 game has stood the test of time. Final Fantasy V takes a narrative step back with the adventure of Bartz, Lena, and Galuf as they rush to protect the elemental crystals from the evil sorcerer Exdeath. Of the 3 from the Super Nintendo, 5 ranks as the weakest of the bunch, as it nixes much of what makes 4 one of the best JRPGs. It does expand upon the job system from 3, and with the addition of combining abilities, there's more player freedom here than you can shake Excalibur at. Still, the rearranged soundtrack feels less bombastic than the other games. It didn't give us that shot of nostalgic adrenaline we expected. If we didn't have the gil to buy every one of these games, Final Fantasy V would be the one we'd leave on the eShop shelf. Now lastly, it's onto the crown jewel of the collection. Final Fantasy VI returns to narrative form and marks the point the series truly found its stride. It's a must-play experience for any JRPG fan, and the Pixel Remaster represents one of the easiest ways to do so. Much like 4, the 6th Final Fantasy features a wide cast full of different personalities. We'll always have a soft spot for Terra, being the first female protagonist introduced in the series. Furthermore, the sprawling narrative that adopts an awesome steampunk aesthetic also has one of the best villains in gaming history, Kefka, the Mad Clown. Final Fantasy VI takes a massive leap forward in terms of dialogue, narrative exposition, and cinematics to bring them all to life, which is an impressive feat nearly 3 decades later. Of all 6 games, Final Fantasy VI also received the most love. Everything from skill updates, enemy stats, and way more things were changed that we surely wouldn't have noticed without checking out the Final Fantasy wiki. Which makes it a shame that the additional dungeons from the Game Boy Advance version were also cut. This time around, the opera scene features real opera singers and HD 2D-esque graphics. And it's hugely exciting to see Nobuo Uematsu's vision for this sequence realized. If you had to pick one Final Fantasy game to spend your hard-earned gil on, Final Fantasy VI would be the one. For all these Super Nintendo and Super Famicom titles, the music and visual upgrades aren't as dramatic as the NES and Famicom games. At first, we thought little had changed. However, when we did go back and check, we realized the wider screen and reworked sprites, especially in the backgrounds, make a blue planet of difference. And at the risk of sounding like a broken MIDI track, the orchestrated music alone warrants a purchase for longtime fans. These 6 remasters provide a superb way to experience or re-experience Final Fantasy history. Not all Final Fantasies were created equal. However, some like 4 and 6 have aged gracefully and remain great narrative-driven adventures, while others might feel a bit more archaic even with the quality of life additions. Purists also may not appreciate the new balancing introduced in these remasters. Even so, if you don't have them on a cartridge with an ancient CRT TV to hook them up to, or don't care to experience the bonus dungeons added in other versions, you'd be hard-pressed to find a more convenient, aesthetically pleasing, and faithful way to play through some of the best JRPGs ever made. We here at Nintendo Life give Final Fantasy 1 through 6 Pixel Remaster on the Nintendo Switch an 8 out of 10. Be sure to let us know your thoughts about the Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters in the comments down below. Did you grow up with any of these titles? Do you have a favorite? Do you like the new change that they made with the classic font in this remaster? Let us know. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos like this, then why don't you Pixel Remaster that subscribe button and then ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we put up more videos like this. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you again to Lowell for spending so much of his hourglass on these games with us. I'm Zion from Nintendo Life. Stay safe out there, and we will see you all next time.